What's up, everybody? Welcome into Daily Betslip on a Thursday. I'm Donnavan Smoot, your host. Got the homie Ben Heisler with me today. We have a pretty straightforward show for you guys today. We have a lot of baseball and a lot of WNBA, but there's still a lot to get to. We're going to get to our game of the night. That's going to come at the end of the show. Brewers and Giants tonight. Great pitching duel. If you guys want to weigh in, head over to YouTube. You guys can vote there, or you can vote on the poll on Twitter. Right. Also, head over to YouTube if you want to stick around, comment on the show. We just got to 500 subscribers today, so make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube page. Keep that number going up. Ben, what's going on?
What's happening, man? Good to have you back. I know you got a chance to take a little trip of your own. Good to have you back in the saddle. Had 3 straight shows with Reed and enjoyed it. Talked a lot of college football, which I was able to get caught up on, but excited to do a little deep dive, do a little power rankings with the second half of the WNBA already underway. We've had such fun being able to break it all down together, do our daily column. So looking forward to today's show and also looking forward to hearing from all you guys.
Yes, sir. We got a whole bunch, like Ben was saying, to get to. But we're gonna start off with our bad beat of the day. Last night, Pirates and Marlins under 7. If you had it, then you suffered the bad beat. It was 2-1. Marlins up heading into the 9th, and the Pirates tied the 4th to force extra innings. And the Pirates scored 2 runs in the top of the 10th, score 4-2, and then, even just when you thought that the Pirates were going to win this, the game was going to be over, Miami scores 3 runs to come back, win in the bottom of the 10th. Just a gross way to lose an under 7 bet.
I mean, imagine having a ticket on the under and it's 1-0 heading into the bottom of the 8th. It's 2-1 Marlins against one of the worst offenses in baseball going into the top of the 9th. And then, Pittsburgh goes ahead and ties the game. It's 1 run. You're thinking to yourself, okay, I still have a 3-run cushion here. And then the Pirates score 2. You're like, I still have a cushion. I'm hanging on for dear life, but at least I can probably save myself if Pittsburgh can at least hang on to the lead. Even they push if they give up 1 run. But no, my friend, no, just another utter disaster. We had some back-to-back bad beats this week between the Reds and the Yankees last night, or not last night, but 2 nights ago that we talked about on the show. Donnavan, the Yankees closer, Holmes, had given up 2 earned runs all season long, and he gave up 4 runs for the Reds to come back. That's one of the worst teams in baseball. He doubled that up without even recording it out. Boy, if you were on the Yankees a couple nights ago and then on the under, you might have to just go ahead and burn some sage around your house and walk around full on Kyrie Irving edition, because things are not going well for you.
When you have unders, and the more and more that you have to say, and then the worse it is, right? The more and more that you have to say, this
Great
happened
point.
and then that happened, you need the least amount of stuff. And for 5 runs to be scored basically in an inning and a half is absolutely heartbreaking. So if you were on the Pirates and the Marlins, our thoughts go out to you. That was a terrible beat. But we're going to move on right now. We're going to get into our best bets of the day. We're going to start with our Twitter best bets. And this one isn't necessarily – it's not necessarily a normal best bet, right? We have over under 3.5 Royals players being traded by the deadline. So the Royals, they're right in your backyard, Ben. How you feel about this one?
So I would have taken the over if not for yesterday's news when it was announced that 10 players on the Royals roster had not been vaccinated against COVID-19. And the only reason that people actually know that is because in order to play in Canada, you need to be vaccinated. And the Royals have more than a third of their roster that is going to be missing for this upcoming series. The Blue Jays have been scuffling a little bit. They fired their manager in Charlie Montoyo, so John Schneider's now 1-0 coming off of their win against Zach Wheeler yesterday. This is going to be brutal for the Royals. And I also think because there were teams, especially in the AL East, that play Toronto, including the Yankees, that have 6 more games against them. Andrew Benintendi was one of those names that was rumored to be a potential Yankee in a trade. Their interest is probably quieting a little bit, because imagine spending and giving up some prospects to acquire a guy that won't be able to play in several key games in the division. If you're in the American League, those are games on the schedule that mean something. So I still think it'll be over, but I don't think it's as clear of an over as we once maybe thought it would be.
Yeah, we still have 2 weeks until the trade deadline. So there's a lot that can happen. I I just know that listen, once you start talking about vaccination status and whether or not you're going to be there for your team, your value goes down a little bit. And we've seen this from every sport. We've seen it from from Carson Wentz in the NFL, and a lot of people
Yeah.
didn't want to put their hands in that bucket because of the vaccination status. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how the Royals play this and how what the value ends up being like for these Royals players. But so you're taking the under on this.
No, I'm still going to take the over. I just think
Okay.
it was a much easier over from before. Now I think things get a little bit complicated. And I also think that you're going to see the Royals not get the return back that they had probably been hoping for because teams can use this as leverage against them. And by the way, Whit Merrifield, another guy that was rumored to be traded in the mix as well. He came out yesterday, Donnavan. I don't know if you saw this, but he basically came out and said, the usual line of it's personal choice. I've decided, I took a lot of advice. But then, like, 2 sentences into the quote, he says, if I get traded, then I might consider getting the shot. So he just completely stepped in it. And the Royals are dealing with a situation where they're already struggling. Expectations were higher this year, and they're a complete and total mess right now. It's kind of a sad situation to watch a lot of this come crumbling down after they built up such good vibes and good feelings in the community from their World Series win and back-to-back World Series appearances no less than 7-8 years ago.
Yeah,
I'm wearing a Heart KC shirt.
wow.
Like I'm part of this community now. So yeah, I think it's definitely disappointing. I think a lot of people here in Kansas City, especially knowing where things are right now with the Royals, yeah, I think they would agree with that sentiment that this is a disappointing news to say.
Yeah. Well, look, we're definitely gonna be keeping our eye on the trade market. Shout out to our guy Jeff Wirtz one for throwing that pick in
Yeah,
there.
I know
You know,
Jeff. Jeff was a longtime listener of our 610 Sports radio show. Get to hear from him and get to see him weighing in on the poll today.
yeah. So shout out Jeff Wirtz. All right. So let's get into our best bets for the day. I want to start with your baseball bets. I know that you have two for today. So where are you going in Major League Baseball today?
All right, so let's start first and foremost with a prop that I like and included this over in our MLB best prop bets for tonight. That's Carlos Carrasco. He is up against the Chicago Cubs, and I've been burned the last couple nights, Donnavan. I usually never bet on the team that I root for in Chicago, but I decided the last couple nights that the pitching matchup actually favored them against the Red Hot Orioles. Turns out that in both games, the underdogs on the road ended up covering, and I'm 0-2 in those games. But I'm going to go against Chicago tonight in Carlos Carrasco's over prop. A lot of different sports books, it's still at 4.5, but it's juiced really, really high. Upwards of 170, minus 180. At WinBet tonight, you have it at plus 100 for over 5. And I think that's a really good number because you're trying to get to that number of 5 anyway. So the Cubs offense, since they got back to Baltimore, have just been in a total funk. They've only scored about 3 runs. They're hitting 191 as a team over the last week. That's dead last in the major leagues. And Carrasco went through a run where he was one of the more hittable pitchers in baseball, but he's settled down, really looked good in the month of July. He's averaging over 10 strikeouts per 9 innings in his last 2 starts, still averaging more than 9 per 9 in the season. Winds blowing in at Wrigley Field tonight. That's always conducive to a better pitching matchup. Carrasco's a fly ball pitcher, so that's just one less thing to have to worry about. And if he's given up a bunch of fly ball outs, he's likely going to stay in the game because those are going to be outs as opposed to home runs. So 5 doesn't feel like a very tough number. Cubs have been in the top 10 in strikeout percentage on the wrong side of it over the course of the entire season. So yeah, I just think Carrasco at 5 feels like a reasonable number to hit, given where the Cubs' state of the offense is, and also the fact that it's a very good opportunity to pitch well in conducive weather environment over at Wrigley Field. As you know, Donnavan, we write the weather column every day at BetSided. There is no park that has a bigger impact on the total when it comes to Wrigley Field. If the wind is blowing out, you usually want to lean overs because that can take a ball that should be a routine fly ball and make Wrigley Field the most hitter-friendly park. When the wind is blowing in, it can become the most pitcher-friendly park in baseball.
Yeah, listen, a lot of stuff is going on in Chicago. I know yesterday the wind was blowing up to 14, 15 miles an hour. So that over is definitely in play. And I don't hate your pick. I know that you have another MLB prop. So where are you going next?
Okay, so the next one that I have, as far as an MLB pick, not a prop, but a pick. Rangers money line -120 against the Seattle Mariners, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, you just talked about how you were betting against the Baltimore Orioles against your Chicago Cubs. They were underdogs, and here you are, one of the hottest teams in baseball. You're betting against them with a worse team. Yes, I am repeating that cycle, but let me explain why. Martin Perez has been a really, really good pitcher for the Texas Rangers this year. One of the more consistent players on their roster in their starting rotation. And yes, the Mariners have put themselves in a terrific spot. They're 18-3 over their last 21 games. They've won 10 straight, looking for 11. If they get to that number, Donnavan, they will be the second longest winning streak team in Mariners history. The team with the longest is 15. That was the Mariners team back in 2001 with Ichiro and Edgar Martinez and Brett Boone, who was probably juicing that year, who had 37 home runs and 141 RBI. Like the level of competition between one of the best teams in baseball history in the regular season versus this Mariners team is pretty remarkable and part of what makes baseball great. But I do like the Rangers on the money line. I do think Perez is in a really good spot. He has the lowest home run per 9 on the entire pitching slate tonight. His ERA is excellent, 2.72. His FIP, fielder independent pitching, also very good, just above 3. And he goes up against Marco Gonzalez, who, if you look at his ERA, it's 3.24. That looks really good. If you look at his FIP, it's nearly 2 runs higher at 5.14. He also just doesn't miss any bats. He doesn't strike anybody out. He's averaging less than 5 strikeouts per 9 innings. I just think the Rangers have enough talent in their team to get to Gonzalez. And I'm going with the pitching matchup. I like the better pitcher here. And kind of like last night with Shohei Ohtani, even though the worst team was favored, it was because of the pitcher, and Shohei ended up coming through for anybody on the Angels in that game. I think it's going to be the same thing with the Rangers. I think the Mariners' 10-game winning streak comes to an end tonight.
Yeah, this game is going to be super, super interesting. And I'm really intrigued by it because the Mariners are right there on the borderline of the wild card right now. They're tied with the Red Sox at 47 and 42, but they don't have the tiebreaker. The Rangers are 4.5 games outside of the wild card. So these games, and listen, we're starting to get to the second half of the year. These games are so interesting. So I'm very curious to see where Seattle ends up if the Rangers are able to make that run. But I like your pick of the Rangers tonight. I want to see what you think about my this is the only MLB prop that I have for today. I'm going Luis Castillo over 6.5 strikeouts plus 115 odds, and plus 110 odds. My bad. The Reds, and you said earlier, look, we all know they're one of the worst teams in baseball, but Castillo's been really, really good over his last 3 starts. He's only allowed 2 runs and racked up 25 strikeouts in that 3-game span. And on top of that, he's going deep into his starts, right? He's gone at least 7 innings in 3 of his last 5 starts. So I think that when even if you're not taking even if you're not taking the Reds to win this game, you can still back Castillo. The Yankees, they have the 12th most strikeouts in baseball over the last 7 days. So I think Castillo, with his recent history, he can definitely force the Yankees to kind of be overly aggressive, start swinging and missing. And even though, right, if you look at his numbers, he's actually missed this line in 3 of his last 5 starts. So it is an aggressive play, but the recent dominance, especially in the last 3 games, is 100% there. So it's going to be him versus Nestor Cortez. I'm fading Cortez tonight. I'm going to back Castillo, and I think that he can get this line at plus money.
I like Castillo quite a bit. He came in to start the season a little bit late, but he's someone that's put in a lot of time right now over in Cincinnati, and I kind of liken him to when Johnny Cueto got traded in 2015, going to the Royals, and ended up becoming a really important piece of Kansas City's rotation and won a massive game against the New York Mets in Game 2 of the World Series. Like, he has that kind of talent. Like, that's a top of the line, number 2, number 3 starter that when he's on, pitches sort of right in that 2 to 1A type category. So I think he's going to continue to put on a show. I think he's ready to get out of Cincinnati, where they haven't won in a while. He just hasn't gotten a ton of run support there, so the record doesn't necessarily look particularly good. But yeah, I think the matchup is right for Castillo, and I like him quite a bit to go ahead and exceed that prop tonight. I do like it a lot.
I bet. I'm glad that I have your support on that. I want to switch gears a little bit. We're gonna go to the WNBA. I know that you have a pick there as well. Where are you siding in with the WNBA?
So there's some weird stuff going on with the Phoenix Mercury, right? And if you look at the talent on this team, even without Tina Charles, who they basically let go for nothing after signing a 1-year deal earlier this year, um, there's just something that feels very, very off about this team. And at one point, they opened up against the Washington Mystics at -1 tonight. That line has since moved in favor of Washington all the way up to -3. I was able to get it -2.5. Uh, Washington's a really good team. Like, maybe not at the top tier of, say, the Las Vegas Aces or Chicago Sky. Maybe you put the Seattle Storm in that mix as well. And we'll talk about that coming up in about 5 minutes or so, sort of that pantheon, those top rankings for the WNBA for bettors in the second half of the season. But I just don't trust Phoenix right now. And I don't think bettors or sharp bettors trust them either. There's a whole lot of issues right now with this team. Skylar Diggins-Smith, according to our friend Howard Megdal, is on the trade block. That's a star in this league. You don't just try to get rid of those types of players. Diana Taurasi in their game, it was a double overtime loss to the Minnesota Lynx. She basically went up for a layup and kicked Sylvia Fowles like right in the groin. Like, just weird stuff in Phoenix. And I don't want anything to do with them. Like, Washington's still a really good team, really good defense, first in points per game allowed, second in opponent points per 100 possessions. The 3 points doesn't feel like too much for them to cover against a team that's very much in dysfunction right now. So yeah, the Mercury have been playing better since Tina Charles left, Donnavan, but 3 points against a good Washington team that's shown that they can win on the road, I have to go with them here.
No, I like that pick a lot. We've seen the Mercury, and I think that you and I have actually backed the Mercury when they had a little bit of drama earlier in the season, and they weren't able to come through. So I like the complete fate of them now. I also have some WNBA picks.
Let's go. Bring it on.
So I'm taking the Wings and the Lynx under. So the under, I got it at 166. It's now moved down to 165, and I'm taking the under because both of these teams, the Wings play at the eighth slowest pace in the league. The Lynx play at the 10th slowest pace, and so I don't think that either offense is going to be able to be like super efficient. Even though that the defenses aren't like fantastic, the offense is going to have to be at an extremely high level with the pace that this game is probably going to be played at. And then if you want to talk about like the recent trends, Minnesota is 1-2-2 against the over in their last 5 games, and the Wings have hit the under in 6 of their last 7 games. They haven't scored 80 points in 3 of their last 5 games. There's just not a lot of offense being scored between these two teams, especially on the Wing side. So I'm going to take the under there. And then my last pick for the WNBA, I'm going to go with the Sky versus the Sparks. I'm going to take the Sky against the spread -4.5. It's moved to -5. I was able to get it at 4.5, and -5 is the line that this game was at when they played at the end of June, and the Sky were able to cover then. I think that they're going to be able to do it again because, and as we've seen, and as we'll probably talk about in about a minute and a half, the Sky have just come together and they're looking like the best team in the league. And Los Angeles, they don't have a lot to offer in this game. They have the play style in terms of how fast that they play, but their defense is not great. They have the second worst defensive rating in the league. And so if you're going to tell me that a great team like Chicago is going to be handed points, which the Sparks will do, I think that this game is going to it might get out of hand fairly quickly. So I'm going to take the Sky -4.5 tonight.
The Sky have also done a good job too of covering late in games. I know towards the end of the first half that wasn't the case. I know they kind of let one get away against the Fever. I think still was barely able to cover, depending on what number you got it at. Some tough losses in there too. But again, we'll talk about this in a second. But I just don't trust the Sparks right now, and they're too inconsistent. They really don't put much effort in on defense. So both those plays add up for me. I certainly can get on board with both the under as well as the sky at only -4.5 and 5.
All right, love to hear it. Okay, so before we move on to our WNBA second half of the season power rankings, I want to get the recap graphic in so everybody knows exactly where we're landing on tonight. So you are going over five strikeouts for Carlos Carrasco. You're going with the Rangers money line -120 versus the Mariners, and you're taking the Mystics -3 against the Mercury. I'm going to take over 6.5 strikeouts for Luis Castillo. I'm going to take the Sky -5 against the Sparks. Again, I got it at -4.5. And I'm going to take the Wings and the Lynx under 165. And once again, I got that at 166. So that is where we're going tonight. Those are all of our plays. Make sure that you guys are rocking with us, and we will let you guys know later how everything works out. But we are now in the second half of the season for the WNBA. The All-Star game has come and gone. The odds have been adjusted for who's going to win the title. And I know that earlier this week, you came out with your power rankings for how you see the WNBA. So take me through your thought process and tell me how you see the league stacking up right now.
Yeah, and I think it's always important whenever you're doing power rankings that this isn't necessarily a full-on prediction, right? You're not saying, I think this is how it's going to be the rest of the season. This is just sort of at this moment heading into the second half. This is where I think these teams stack up. I think you would agree, Donnavan, that at the top, there's probably 2, maybe 3 teams that are in that upper echelon. And we'll get to those coming up in just a second. But I want to kick things off with the Washington Mystics. They're 15-1 right now to win the WNBA title. This is a team that is going to be a thorn in the side of anybody that plays them because of their commitment on the defensive end. They rank first in opponent points per game, second in opponent points per 100 possessions. And they've also dealt with some injuries, some COVID stuff over the course of the summer as well. I think getting Elena Delle Donne back for the rest of the way is going to be critical for them. This is a team that I think, because of how well they commit on defense, when they get hot offensively, these games turn into blowouts because very rarely does Washington just let another team go up and down the court against them. They play slow, they play physical. I just don't know if they're necessarily at the top of the line just yet. And another team that I would put at number 4, I kind of put in that same second tier with Washington, and that's Connecticut. I know that the Sun first, maybe month and a half of the season, were in that top tier with the Aces, and they just kind of fell apart, really struggled down the stretch of the season. Their defense, which had been top 3 in efficiency and in defensive rating, started to slide a little bit. I also think they need more help for Jonquel Jones and Alyssa Thomas. And also their 3-point shooting, Donnavan, has been terrible. They're 11th in the league. If you're going to be able to start being able to create some more space, and remember, like, they're a tall, bigger team. They're not going to necessarily beat you on the perimeter. So you need to have the threat of more 3-point shooting. And I think they could use a little bit of help. I don't know how active they're going to be at the deadline, but they need to be able to start improving on their outside shots. And I think they're sort of still in that top second tier. I just don't know if I necessarily put them as championship contenders, even though they're at plus 550 on the odds over a win bet.
Yeah. And honestly, what's interesting about this list, and we'll probably get back to the Sun, but the Storm at 3 and the turnaround that Seattle has had has been really, really exciting to watch, right? Because they started off 1-3 and they're now 7-3 in their last 10. They're 3rd overall in the league at 16-8. Breanna Stewart is the favorite for MVP. Obviously, this is Sue Bird's last season, so you have a lot of factors just coming in. And the Storm they've kind of been on and off in terms of winning a championship, then take a down year, and then they'll win another championship. And right now, I think that they might be the sneaky team to maybe do it again and win a championship and sneak in there.
Here's the thing about the Storm. You're right. They're I think they're now in the conversation with the Aces and with the Sky. And I think the addition of Tina Charles solidifies that. You're right. You have an MVP caliber player in Brianna Stewart. Sue Bird's final season, she continues to shoot well from outside. It's a really talented team. And I think you just need to see a little bit more consistency out of them. If you had the Storm play the Aces or the Sky, I don't think it's a blowout from either of those top two teams, which we'll get to as far as who's number one and who's number two. If you're buying in on a narrative, like the Storm have moved their way up. They were at plus 650 and they were at plus 575 with Chicago. They keep working their way up at plus 400. I know that they're inconsistent, but I mean, they still have almost as many wins as the Aces. They were 15-8 when I wrote these power rankings, so they're now 16-8. But just some rough halves, some inconsistencies. I think they can get there, but I think they're a team that could be very dangerous in the postseason. I just don't think they're at that top one or two just yet.
Yeah, and so moving on to your list. So you have the Las Vegas Aces at 2, and so even though they're the favorite, your entire top 5 is kind of reflective of how the standings are in terms of 1 through 5. The only thing that switches that the Sky are 1. What's because this is still like confused me. What's going on with the Aces, right? Because they're 4-5 in their last 9, 5-5 in their last 10.
Mm-hmm.
They just seem to not be able to pull out these wins. And for a team as talented as they are, with all the All-Stars, they have several MVP candidates on their squad. Something's off, right? It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I think they were just gassed, to be perfectly honest. I think part of the issue and part of the reason I have them number 2 is they didn't really trust a lot of players on their bench. It's been all Jackie Young. It's been all Kelsey Plum and Chelsea Gray and Asia Wilson. They need more minutes from the rest of their bench, and I think they just kind of ran out of gas. That game against the Sky where they got off to such a fantastic start, I think up by 27 points in the first quarter, and then Chicago came all the way back and beat them fairly handedly to win that game. It's a couple things. Like, they need to have a better commitment on the defensive end. They're still in the bottom half of the league in defensive rating and defensive per 100 possessions and points per 100 possessions. But they just need to be able to rest their core. Like, from a talent standpoint, it's the Aces, and I understand why they're tops in the rankings. But if I put Chicago ahead of them, because of the fact that they're the more stable, more consistent team. They're also the best free throw shooting team in the league. They make key defensive stops. They're just a team that's really good at everything. And the Aces are elite at a handful of things. And so when that matches up in the postseason, if you don't have depth in on your bench, if you're continuing to make a run and your core and your starters just get exhausted, I think that's a benefit and an advantage to the Sky. And that's why I have them number 1 over Las Vegas. Now, they've looked really good. They just beat the heck out of the New York Liberty, despite playing that game at 8 a.m. Las Vegas time on the road at Brooklyn today, just completely destroyed New York. So they won back-to-back games on the road in that series. And I think they were embarrassed that Sabrina Ionescu had 2 record-setting games against them. So I still like the Aces. I think it's going to be the Sky and the Aces in the finals. But right now, yeah, there's still some issues defensively, but they've looked really good to start the second half.
Yeah, and if you look at the Sky's schedule, they haven't lost back-to-back games all season long, right? So they just keep rattling on these win streaks, and like you said, they just do everything. They do everything well, and it's those consistent teams that are able to push through. So it's going to be a really interesting, final push here at the for the end of the season. I know that we have a recap graphic on your list. So you have the Sky as the number 1 team to start the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Their championship odds are at plus 275. The Aces, who are the favorite, at plus 140, come in at 2. The Storm, who at the time were plus 400, have moved up to plus 300. You have the Sun at plus 550 at number 4, and then the Washington Mystics can be a nice little dark horse. Can get some value on them at 15-1. So that's how things are shaking out in the WNBA. We have a lot to look forward to in that league, but it's now time for us to get to the game of the night. And we have a pitching duel, and a great one at that, with Corbin Burns and Carlos Rodon tonight. I know where I'm leaning for this game. I want to hear your best bet of this game though.
All right. So initially, I was looking at it and thinking to myself, like, I have to take the under, right? But then I looked and saw it. It was like 6.5, juiced to minus 120 on the under. I don't know if I can necessarily get there, but the matchup makes sense. And you have a guy in Rodon who might be pitching for his next team. We talked about Luis Castillo. But depending on what happens with Rodon and the San Francisco Giants, who are only 3 games over 500, it's crazy, Donnavan. They were the best team in baseball at this point a season ago. They had 57 wins. They were 20 plus games above 500 heading into the All-Star game and afterwards. So it's crazy. You bring in an AL Cy Young contender. He's an NL Cy Young contender, and you're this far back in the standings from a year ago. Ultimately, I look at this and I say this is a matchup that I think sets up a little bit better for Rodon. He's filthy at home, like a strikeout rate of almost 13 per 9 at home compared to a little over 10 on the road, which is still very good. The overlying numbers for Burns, as far as like ERA goes, are also very good on the road. It's at a little less than 2. He's just not as dominant from a metric standpoint. Like, he doesn't miss as many bats. He's far better in that department at home. And I think I'll give the advantage in a matchup that is so close in the odds. I do like San Francisco. They've won 2 straight. Milwaukee lost the other night. The Brewers bats can go cold, as can the Giants. But Burns also has more of a tendency to have some of those blow-up games. I don't think it'll necessarily happen tonight. But I like Rodon to outduel Burns here, especially in his home ballpark where he's just striking out everybody.
Yeah, and I'm 100% on the same wavelength. That's why my best bet, I'm taking Carlos Rodon over 7.5 strikeouts. He's cleared this line in 4 of his last 6 games. We all know the strikeout artist that Rodon is, and he's coming off of a 12 strikeout performance against San Diego. So I think that he's going to be able to ride the hot hand at home. It's fairly juiced. The prop is fairly juiced. It's minus 150, but Rodon is. And as we've seen this entire season, he's fantastic. So that's why I'm going the community pick, and the people have sided with you, and they're taking the Giants money line minus 106
All right.
against the Brewers. And so you get to double down on your bet. I get to join you on that bet, and I don't hate it at all. Look, the Giants over the last week have the best OPS in baseball at 888 all across the board. So their bats are swinging right now. They have an ace on the mound tonight. So that is the show. That is where the community is siding. So we all will be rooting for the Giants tonight. Tomorrow it will be myself. I'll be back. I'll be with Reed, who, like you said, is just putting the team on his back. His 4th show of the week. But thank you everybody for watching. Remember to like and subscribe down below on YouTube, and we will see you guys tomorrow. And until then, may all your bets hit.